dash. It looks like, however, the players from Future Adversity get much better speed off the launch here. So Ramus is going to try to move in, at least give himself a chance to score. He's not going to be working alone, though. Cyanus is helping him out. He's got to get past on the boat. Nice punch with the left hand. Can he bounce it in? Beautiful play from Cyanister.
Okay, so the brawling aspects of the arena is comprised of two things: punching and shielding. So when it comes to the punching, there's two things to remember. One is that when you punch an opponent, they will stay stunned for a certain amount of time, and after that they will be invincible for a certain amount of time. So when they're stunned, they obviously can't move. They can only use their head to kind of try to headbutt the disc away. But after that, they're going to be invincible to any new punches for a certain amount of time. The second thing to remember is that the speed of the punch is quite irrelevant. So it doesn't really matter if you put a lot of force into it or if you just gently kind of tap. It's the same result. So it's not like throwing the disc where the speed actually matters. So especially if you have delicate items in your room, try to avoid like going all Mike Tyson on your opponents. So you can hold your shield up for quite a long time until it expires. However, if you do let go of your shield, regardless if you held it down for a long time or not, there's going to be a bit of a time delay before you can activate it again. So if you let go, you're always going to be able to get stunned by your opponent. Also, while most people hold their shield up here, you don't have to. You can hold it quite far down. And this makes it easier to move around because while you obviously can't grab geometry while shielding, you can still use your thrusters and back booster. Also, punching your opponent is going to give you a small knockback of about 1.8 meters per second. Like so. And you can use this to your advantage. Easiest way is to do this with two hands. So you grab them, and as you let go, you punch them on the way out. You can also do this with one hand. Then you have to grab their head, obviously. So you simply just grab them and punch in one smooth motion. I find that it's actually easier to get more speed that way, for some reason. So you got brawling, boosting, and passing comprising kind of a rock, paper, scissors system in this game. Because if you think about it, brawling can take out boosting because you can disable a stack of two players using only one person brawling them. At the same time, boosting can beat passing because the boosting power of two people can chase down and put hard pressure on a disc being passed between 3 or even 4 people. Also, passing tends to beat brawling because if you get the pass off to your teammate while getting punched or right after you got punched, you win because you kind of sent the disc forward, and even if you get stuck, it's usually not that big of a problem. So that's talking in a general game sense, but when it comes to brawling players one-on-one for the disc, there's also kind of a rock, paper, scissors system coming into play. If I have the disc and an opponent's coming up to pressure me for it, they can do the shield pushing thing that I showed you before, but if they do that, they can't grab the disc because it takes both their hands up, so I'm going to be able to get the pass off. They can also punch me, but the way this game works with latencies and stuff, usually you get the pass off anyway. So another thing that the opponent can do is obviously simply try to steal the disc from me. And one way to do this is by using something called angel wings, which is simply holding out both your hands with auto grab on, try to kind of wave them a little bit like this, and hopefully you get in the way of any trajectory that they're trying to throw the disc. But if they're doing that, obviously they can't shield. So I can pull out a surprise punch and make the opponent look really stupid. So what I usually try to do when I have the disc and I get pressured by an opponent is I try to make the pass to my teammate, and then straight after I throw out a quick punch to the opponent. Because if they come at me with the shields up, they can't shield and try to steal the disc at the same time, which means that I get my pass off. And even if I punch them afterwards and I get stunned because I punch into their shield, I got my pass off, which means I win. Let's say they do the angel wings, they try to steal the disc out of my hands. They will do so, but straight after I punch them, then they lose the disc, I take it back and I make the pass. I win. So a pretty common outcome of this scenario is that we both get stunned. And if I manage to get the pass off before that happens, then I win. If not, it's a draw, because then it's about who can get to the disc after we recover from the stun. So with all these things in mind, what I usually try to do when I'm the one pressuring the disc is to punch them and grab the disc at the same time, because while it doesn't work all the time, it's pretty difficult. When it works, it sends you winning out of most of these scenarios, unless the carrier decides to juggle with the disc, meaning letting go of the disc briefly, putting up their shield until they get punched, and then grabbing it back. If they do this, anything that the pressuring person is doing involving punching is going to leave them losing and the carrier winning out of that situation. The only problem is, just like juggling in real life, it can be kind of tricky in a high-paced scenario, and odds are that you do it kind of like this. Now, I'm sure you've noticed at some point an opponent kind of leeches onto you, just holds onto your foot and tries to punch you over and over. This can be a good idea, but most of the time it's just going to be a liability for that player, because he's going to take himself out of the game for his teammates, so his teammates have one less person to work with. And this is especially bad if you're on defense, because normally on defense, since you need a goalkeeper, it's sort of like a 4v3 situation, and if you do that, then you make it into a 3v2 situation, which is even worse. That said, there are moments when leeching onto a player to punch them can be a really good idea. For example, if you have very limited time left and really desperately need that three-pointer.
Oh my god, they do it!
Also related to one-on-one interactions is what we call juking. And this is basically trying to prevent your opponent from grabbing onto you. And you can do this physically by using your play space. It's easier if you have a larger play space, and you can sort of lean, avoid people that way. You can duck down and jump if you have a high ceiling. Another way is by using objects, simply grabbing them and like throwing yourself around them like this. It can actually make it really difficult for opponents to grab onto you.
I'm covering back on the double. Popcorn left. Cloud left.
Right side flying.
Right side. Moving up.
So, since current virtual reality technology is quite limited when it comes to your field of view, your resolution, and your general ability to move around and look at your environment quickly, giving your teammates information about what's happening around them can really mean everything in this game. In my opinion, the most important call out you can give to your teammate is simply giving them an option to throw the disc that's safer than trying to throw it randomly, if they don't have time to look around and see what's going on. We have a bunch of names for these blocks that's spread out over the arena. Like this one's called a bow tie, kind of looks like a bow tie. And this one's called a nest, since the disc is here, kind of like an egg on a nest. And these are called the Pac-Mans, and so on and so forth. I'll link a video in the description where you can check out these names. Now, another thing that your teammates can appreciate is knowing how much time they have with the disc. For example, do they have tons of time so they can take a long three-pointer or just walk it in safely? Do they have so amount of time so they can sort of turn around, look around for some options, but not more than that? Or do they have no time at all, so they just have to slap the disc in an approximate direction? One system that's being used for this is the traffic light system. You can, for example, yell green if your teammate has tons of time, yellow if they have okay amount of time, and red if they don't have any time at all. But to be honest, in 4v4 and the higher level play you go, you can just assume that you don't have any time and instead just yell time when they actually do have time, which is not often. But the third call out I want to mention is the name call outs. That's basically for calling on your teammates' attention. For example, when you're passing the disc around, it's much better if you call the teammate's name right before you pass it. That gives him that extra little nudge to look around if his attention is somewhere else. And you can also use the name call out if you want to stack up with someone and boost somewhere. If you're behind someone, then you can just yell their name, and that sort of automatically means turn around, I'm here, let's go. So with all those possible callouts, it's also really important to actually keep quiet and only talk when you have something important to say. Because you don't want to be in a situation, for example, where you're giving a call out that your teammate has all the time in the world, when there's another player in the back trying to tell you that there's a guy right on you. And finally, and most importantly, keep calm, stay positive, and never call out teammates' mistakes while you're playing. Because if you set one person's mentality down, that's going to spread to all the other teammates, and that's just going to make everyone play worse. Holding.
On chill.
Rollouts are start strategies in Echo Arena, and there's 3 types of them. The initial one, or the joust, is when the disc is in the middle and both teams race at it from each end. The attacking is when you got scored on and you have the disc on your side. And then you have defending, which is the opposite, when you scored on the opponents and they had the disc on their half. So for the initial joust, there's 2 parts of it. First of all, you want to be able to get to the disc as fast as possible. But once you're there, you want to have some kind of setup so you can keep the disc and you don't just get it stolen right away. Now, in terms of speed, you obviously want to try to fly out this tube with as many regrabs as you possibly can. So try to find the teammate that you can boost the best with and just practice that over and over again. Now, you can of course use this catapult to get that extra 6 meters per second of speed out the tube. And this is how most new players launch. But players discovered quite early on that the door into the arena is opening at the exact same time as this launcher activates. And when I was in a team when our regrabs were really bad and we could never get to the disc in time, we just decided to start bypassing the catapult altogether and just go down into the tube and regrab all the way and try to time the door so that we would reach the door exactly as it opens. And if you do that, you'll actually reach the disc way faster than anyone using the ring. Now, you can get pretty creative with this idea. As I mentioned, the more amount of regrabs and the higher speed you can get off the top of the tube, the better, as long as you keep the timing perfect towards the door so that you enter the door exactly as it opens. Now, one problem is, as you can see, the tube kind of goes upwards and then angles out into the arena. So if you try to go really fast up the tube, you're going to bump your head into the ceiling. So one way to deal with this is that you can have one stack going up the tube that you actually sacrifice and you let them bump their head. And then you have a second stack holding on to the first stack that will throw off just before they bump their heads. So they keep the speed, and then those 2 players can keep boosting all the way out to the disc. One thing you can do when you're about to reach the disc is to try to judge if you're going to be a lot faster than the other team, slightly faster than the other team, or slower than the other team, and have different setups for those 3 things. For example, if you're a lot faster than the other team, then you can pick the disc up and pass it to a predetermined spot that you talked about with your teammates. If you're slightly faster, then you can try to go for the headbutt so that at least you send it into their half. And if you're slower than the other team, then maybe you can grab onto the opponents and try to leech on them, punch them out, steal the disc, or otherwise trying to stop them from doing something useful. Now, attacking and defending rollouts are also kind of like a game of rock, paper, scissors, with the difference that not only are you trying to guess what the opponent's move is going to be, but you're also trying to adapt to it in real time. Now, one common defending rollout is the man mark. If you think about it, the quarterback, that is the player grabbing the disc from the nest, they're not really a threat with the disc immediately, since they're moving slowly and they don't have a shot at goal until maybe they reach around here or something like that. So you can let them have it for that time, and meanwhile try to get on all the other players and cut off all the passing options. And when all the passing options are cut off, then you attack the quarterback, and they don't have any choices left. So they're just going to surrender pretty much, or try to score the goal, which is going to be really difficult from this position. But if the attacking team assumes that the defenders are going to try to man-mark them, they can counter this by, for example, making a really fast play where they just yeet the disc all the way through and send all the players after and try to score as fast as possible. Now, this is going to make it very difficult to man-mark, and the defenders are going to wish they held more people back instead of trying to attack the quarterback, since the quarterback doesn't really hold the disc for more than a second. Now, man-marking for defense and fast play for attack are 2 examples of more decisive rollouts. You can also have a more adaptive rollout where you try to adjust to what the other team is doing as they're doing it. Now, one example of such a rollout is called the blast joust. And the way that works is you send 3 players forward as fast as possible. 2 of them stay stacked on this block right here, while the 3rd player goes to attack the quarterback, makes the quarterback throw it, usually into one of these tunnels here, and then these 2 players can boost after the disc or the player meant to receive the disc as fast as possible. Now, this was a very popular, aggressive way of playing when there were 3 people in each team. You would leave the goal open but have a very good chance of getting the disc instantly. Now when there's 4 people in each team, you can actually have this less aggressive and keep one player back, protecting the goal while you're doing this rollout. Alright, so hopefully you enjoyed that little run through of Ica Arena and some of the things it has to offer. If you want more content on the game, you can check out my YouTube channel. I got some like practice videos and other kind of tips and hints of what you can do to get better. Also have all our games from the very first seasons of BRL with Team Gravity up until now with BRML, so it's kind of interesting to see the competitive scene developing. Also all the like the offline games and LAN games and that kind of thing. So that can be fun. But yeah, I'm not going to ask you to like and subscribe and hit the bell because I'm not a YouTuber. I honestly don't care. Other than that, I hope to see you in the game.